Okay, I'm going to call this work session to order at 7:04. A little bit later, we wanted to give everyone time to get in, sign the sign-in sheet, find a seat, get seats for everyone. I'm glad you're all here. The purpose of this evening is for us to hear from you, and that's what we're going to try and do. If everyone wants to speak, we'll be here a while, but that's okay. The first order of business is the setting of the public hearing for local law number 3, a public hearing to override the tax levy limit established in General Municipal Law 3C, and this is local law number 3 of 2013 for the town. I'd ask for a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Mr. Renadette, second Mr. Wood. Any discussion? Get a roll call on that?
Thomas Wood?
Yes.
Art Dana?
Yes.
Paul LeMoyne?
Yes.
George Renadette?
Yes.
Randy Johnson?
Yes. Again, we want to hear from everyone, and we need to make sure we give everyone an opportunity to ask you to try to keep your comments to 5 minutes if you can. I'm going to go in order of our sign-in sheet. Individuals that wanted to make comment this evening, please state your name and your address for the record. And with that said, Mr. Baker.
Yes, Nar Baker, 264 Route 374, Katyville, New York. First item I'd like to address here is, as a public hearing, I was quite surprised not to see copies of the tentative budget placed near the sign-in sheets. I realize they can be picked up through public information, but I thought it would be an issue that should be able to be distributed among the group. That's number one. Number two, my question is, I realize that you are looking at other municipalities and the tax rate that other municipalities are trying to get for highway. And my question is, with the county sales tax, even though at this time it is an unknown thing, the amount is coming in the fourth quarter. I believe the third quarter exceeds the revenue that's been in the past. And my question is, what do you plan on doing with this added sales tax that will be coming in the fourth quarter?
I'm not going to speak for everyone else present, but the main purpose we're here, Norm, is to hear from everyone. It's going to be difficult to engage in any kind of lengthy discussion about particular questions. And certainly not to be confused with, you know, we want to respond to. For example, your first comment about the budget. You know, we didn't think to put budgets out there. I don't know that everybody here doesn't already have them. They've been available since the 30th at the clerk's office, as well as online, which many people do that online. Probably to get it tonight and see it for the first time wouldn't be of a huge amount of value. And, I mean, that's the why on that. This is a public hearing about local law number 3. Obviously, we can't divorce it from a discussion about the budget, but it's about the local law to override the cap. The cap, as set by the state for us this year, is about 1.66. That would leave us, we're told, at about $110,000 to raise in new levy funds for next year. What we've done is produce a tentative draft. This tentative draft budget is a first draft. We've spent some time talking with department heads, having some department head meetings, some one-on-one meetings, sharing with our department heads that this did not look like it was going to be a good year. you never know what the pie is going to taste like until you put the ingredients in, you cook it up, and you get that first bite, I guess. But we could tell it didn't look good. We made them very aware of a few things, that if we continued to do what we were doing with the revenue we anticipate and the expenses we anticipate, 2014 wasn't going to work for us. We then asked them, and it's just part of the budget process, I'm sure most of you are aware of it. We had to have a tentative budget available to be filed with the clerk on the 30th, which is what's out there. We took what they gave us pretty much at face value. Negotiations were still going on with employees. They continue to go on. We have not settled. There was a discussion about a raise with an amount of 2.5. I didn't think it would be appropriate to try to hide money in a budget, especially this budget. So in preparing the tentative budget, I asked our budget officer to go ahead and put 2.5% salary increase for next year for every person who receives a paycheck from the town, however large, however small. That way we know what we have. It seemed like the honest, fair way to go at that. We still haven't settled in my mind, and I can only speak my mind. That's not going to happen. We've already eliminated any increases for elected officials, for appointees of elected. But you have to put together a budget with the information you have. We could have probably, and my colleagues maybe wish we had, worked with it more before we put out the tentative, made some cuts more before we put out the tentative budget. I thought it was important that our budget officer took what the department heads gave them, and they had good information that it wasn't going to be a good year. I felt it important that she take that information, put it in the budget, to see truly numbers, let the numbers talk. What were we talking about? How bad is it going to be? It's bad enough. We continue to look at it. We started our meetings today with department heads. There were reductions and cuts, and we have tried to eliminate things that we felt we could do without. We tried to take some decisions, investments we might otherwise make in 2014 because it's a good move, and delay it in a variety of places. Last week I met the budget officer, and our finance manager and I met with department heads before we even got to the counselors. And we began to build a budget that had a lot more reality in it. And there have been a number of changes. Counselors, as they sit here today when they came in for the first round of budget meetings, got that information for the first time. It's up to the group to decide what stays out, what stays in. But we did some paring already with a pretty sharp knife, I think. There's more coming. The information that came out was some hard reality. We talk about a 47% increase. I had one person talk to me, and they were just really upset, rightfully so, that their taxes were going up 47%. It's kind of what it said. But really what it meant is that the tentative budget, which is our first draft, not the last, was 47% over the tax cap, which isn't a good sign. Your bills, my bills, when we receive our tax bill, it has a lot of things on it, and depending the services that you receive. We don't have a town general tax, but there'll be a highway, they'll have a water, an ambulance, fire department. We're pretty sensitive too. It isn't just the town. And I don't think anybody here is going to be critical of our volunteer fire departments, that without them, it'd be worse. The ambulance service, and what they've done probably to many of your families, maybe you, as far as being there and providing a quality service. But that's a bill. There are no free lunches, and unfortunately, the revenue doesn't come in. We've worked hard these last few years. All of you know we've been under the tax cap each year. We've done some things we just put in place that were an investment that we think and we believe and are confident the revenue from that will come in subsequent years. So we had to make the investment this year. We've spent down our funds, our discretionary funds, if you will, the surplus, the reserves, the unappropriated fund balances. As I talk to the fiscal people, they often correct me because I put the wrong word on it. At the end of the day, it's the money that you can put here or put there or do whatever you want with it, I guess. Lower taxes, invest in new programs. We've spent that. We've used that. Up until recently, and there was a lot of publicity over the Beekman Town School District, municipalities, public schools were told the rainy day is here. The state doesn't have money. There are cuts. You all know. There are cuts everywhere. You've got to spend down those reserves because we can't raise it. And here's the cap. And I totally agree, and I think everybody on the board does. New York State needed a cap. All of us needed a cap. In order to keep services under control, we need to grow. We've been pretty fortunate with that. Some of you may want to talk about that. New businesses, new jobs, that's pretty good. We lost some. Seems like some days we lost one more than we gained, but I think there's a net gain. We don't want to chase them out with high cost of doing business in the town of Plattsburgh or New York State. We agree with that. But at the end of the day, the ambulance bill's got to be paid. And an awful lot of people don't have insurance to pay for that call when the run's made. The fire department's got to be paid. Some of you are volunteer firemen. You know the cost of the equipment. We're seeing new stations coming up in all of our districts. I don't think it's just because the fire department wants to build a new, bigger, better station. There are reasons for that. Some districts add a little more to their station maybe than others, but it's got to be paid for. Everything has a price. What we're looking at now, and this was a hard reality, a little scary, but I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't do it another way. Because if I did, you might not be here. If we had played a shell game, we might not sharpen the pencil quite as sharp. Because no matter what, numbers don't lie. We were on a bit of a crash course. Now, in 2013, we get a new approach to municipal financing. And the comptroller's office comes out with fiscal stress. They first sent something to me early in the year and wanted us to pilot a fiscal stress monitoring. I immediately told them I didn't need to play a fiscal stress game. I'm already in fiscal stress. I don't need a test to tell me that. The program came anyway. And rightfully so again. The comptroller's office is saying, for your school district, for your municipality to be sound, you need a rainy day fund. That's the same area that said the rainy days here, spend those funds down. So it gets a little confusing. But there's a new monitor. And we went through that in 2013. And we didn't get a scarlet letter. We did okay. There were 3 categories. I can't tell you what they all are. 2 of the 3 we did extremely, extremely well. We're very healthy. Number 3, we almost were cited. And that was the one about our reserve funds. We have to have reserve funds. And we should. Every time a piece of equipment breaks, every time you have, the next storm of the century, you don't want to have to pull out the credit card and borrow money. All of that kind of begins to build into where we are. We're trying to comply. We want to be fiscally healthy. We want to provide services and programs. This board hasn't decided, we don't know what the next stage of the budget's gonna look like yet. We're in the pairing process. If someone wants to know, what is my tax rate gonna be next year, I don't think I can tell you. Because I don't have a budget. I can probably tell you that it won't be, and it won't be as high as it looks now. I maybe could say it won't be what it was last year, because I don't think that's gonna work. But I can also tell a few people, maybe the senior trip that we would just jump on the bus the town provided and go to Montreal for the day won't be free. I don't mean to just pick on Parks and Rec, but we've had some of those conversations. Maybe East Morrisonville doesn't get the number of people going there during the summer it used to. Maybe we need to cut that part of our offerings as well. Our employees, board members, there are workshops and conferences we go to, we learn things, we get updates on new laws. They're important. We may have to get that information another way because we don't have the money to go to those conferences. We're making those decisions. And I mean, if you want an honest answer, that's the most generic, honest one I can give you at the moment. And I know I went a long way, Norm, on yours, but I would guess everybody sitting here is saying you can't raise the taxes that high, but none of us really know how high it's supposed to be at, really. And we heard that, we know that.
I have one more question. You haven't really sat down and studied the tentative budget and did your cuts before you get into your preliminary budget or your final budget.
We've started that process now.
You have started.
Yes.
It didn't sound that way. It sounded like only you had gotten into
We
that
had the
issue.
first meeting with the department and the board today. Last week, I met with departments. Prior to that, we had just gotten the budget.
The point is, why are you proposing a local law and you haven't sat down yet and done a
Good
final
question.
budget?
Yep, because we have to. If there's any possibility we're going $1 over, by law, we have to have this law in place.
And
And
why,
the comptroller's office will recommend, if your budget year looks tough, just put that local law in place. It's for 1 year. And then, you know, if you have to go there, you've got it. Okay, I'm gonna go down the list now. You know, maybe that helps, maybe it doesn't.
Well, actually, it doesn't.
Let me go down the list, please.
Being a public worker myself and being a state employee, right now I'm on suspension without pay because I'm a whistleblower. But I don't think what a lot of people realize is that one state agency, OPWDD, Office for People with Developmental Disabilities, they have a $17 billion Medicaid fraud on their backside.
Can I ask what your name is, please?
My name is Michael W. Ormsby, and I live at the junction of Route 3 and 22B. Also, Office of Mental Health has like about a $22 million Medicaid fraud, and so does the Office of Children's of Division of Youth and Children's Services, whatever. And I think that's what a lot of these taxes are all about, these modest increases. But being a public employee and having seen just what goes on with the state itself, I'm telling you right now, this is all what this tax is all about. Getting Cuomo out of his mess so he can come out looking squeaky clean. I didn't vote for Andrew Cuomo. I saw what his father did for Plattsburgh. Okay? I saw what his father did for Plattsburgh. And also as when your illustrious Andrew Cuomo was the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, he had knocked down a couple of plans for Plattsburgh that some people, there's just a little piece in the paper that I read. I do read the newspaper and I listen to the news every now and then. But being a public employee and having right now being out on suspension without pay, but collecting my unemployment, so to speak, I'm not very proud of any modest tax or any modest this or modest that. I think whoever the politicians are that got us in this mess, they need to get us out of it. And they need to go step back in time to clean up the messes. Okay? You can lay down you can lay down a whole new carpet, but if you don't clean the floor that's underneath it, the stuff's gonna come right back up through again. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mike. I need to go down the list in order
My
of
name
people
is
who
Mike.
signed in. Stephen Schiff,
So you people go ahead and you put your gosh darn Andrew Cuomo back in office again next year. Do it again. Don't forget what Mario did for us back in '93. Have a good night. The end.
I just have a,
I'm short and sweet. I don't need to write a whole new editorial about doing this and doing that and doing a word salad about something that a lot of people don't understand. But you go ahead and you dig Mr. Cuomo out of his mess.
Stephen.
I just have a couple questions. You want to raise the tax 47%. Granted, it may go down a little, may go up a little, we don't know. What's happening to the sales tax that's coming in?
That's come
Where
up.
is that gonna go
Yep.
to?
That's come up a couple times, so I'll try to
Okay.
react.
I'm
Okay.
gonna give me my questions and you can answer them.
All right.
Okay. Just this week, again, I read in the paper, the delinquent taxes. Not everybody's paying their fair share. They wait, they cost the county money to go delinquent. They must pay them the last minute. But yet we give these people building permits, we let them start building. That's wrong. You can get more money from that. We work on the roads, and I have no quarrel with any of the town employees. I think they do a great job. But in my budget at home, I have a fund where I'm gonna get it, money from. But I do not have enough money from the interest on my money put away to pay for anywhere near a tax increase like this. And that's basically what I have to say.
Again, I've got to be brief so we can hear you. That's the purpose of this. Sales tax will be worked into the budget, most likely between highway and general fund. Gary Gutz was next.
Okay, mine, I don't think there'll be any questions, mostly it'll be a statement.
Good.
I watched you on television last night. I was unhappy and shocked when I heard the supervisor talking about the local law on local television last night. He seemed to imply the reason the town needs to pass a local law and exceed the New York State tax cap is because the highway department needs more and more revenue. You stated that the price of salt, asphalt, and tires have increased, and therefore the highway costs have increased. First of all, let's get this straight. The highway department isn't the beneficiary of any extra money raised by the tax increase. But since the only property tax the town collects is the highway tax, that's where the board can raise taxes. This whole affair is nothing but a shell game which allows the general fund, which has blown all its resources, to keep all the sales tax money while the highway department takes all the blame. I spoke with Mr. Jim Woods. He told me that the price of salt has not increased like Mr. Bassett claimed, and in 2014 will stay the same as 2013. And because the highway department had some salt left over from last year, Mr. Woods was able to cut $50,000 from his salt budget. Asphalt prices are increasing, but in order to be physically prudent, Mr. Woods said he will keep his asphalt budget the same as it is this year. The highway superintendent will run his department one man short, saving us another $80,000. In all, Mr. Woods has cut his budget by 10%, and you had the nerve to place all the blame on him. If all departments would cut their budgets by 10%, as our highway superintendent has done, there would be no need to even consider passing a law to exceed the tax cap. And then, to talk a little bit about your op-ed in today's paper. You stated in your op-ed that most residents feel it is important to control expenditures. So why isn't the town board having all the departments trim some of their fat? I agree that many towns have a higher highway tax, but they also have a much lower county tax, because if what I hear is right, they return the sales tax money to the county to keep that tax down. If you compare the county tax and the highway tax of these towns, we would be about the same. It isn't true that you stated that the sales tax revenue is not always predictable. The only year it wasn't predictable was 2008, when the market died, when all of us lost money. They have been close for the last 25 years, even occasionally low on their estimates. And then you talked about kicking the can down the road. You guys wouldn't be kicking the can down the road if you would tighten your belt and quit spending. No fund balance exists because of the board spending. You want to operate the town like a business, like you say you want to do. Quit spending money you don't have. The taxpayers can't afford higher taxes. I'm retired. I have a budget. I don't spend what I don't have. The town, if you compare the size... I know a lot of the town employees, but if you compare the number of employees that we have in this town to some towns the same size as ours, we're very fat. Thank you.
You're welcome. Some of these are going to be hard to read for me, I apologize. Is it Bryce, possibly? Signed in after Gary? Oh, no, Bill.
Bill?
This is Bill. Bill Bridget, yes, sorry.
Bill Broderick, Independence Drive. Yeah, Bernie, you said at that table in July, on July 8th, and you basically made the decision at that time and reconfirmed it on September 23rd and September 30th that you were going to raise this highway tax so that the highway department is self-sufficient. And you said it again in the newspaper today, the highway department is self-sufficient. So it seems to me like you're hell-bent on putting that $1.5 million taxes on there. Now, I brought a visual aid here.
Is she pretty?
No.
Vanna?
Debbie, if you could hold that. You know, this is information from your budget. You know, here's the new highway tax, 1.5 million. From your budget, overall town spending was up 500,000. And so it appears you have $1 million surplus, just the additional revenue less the additional spending. And then when we talked to the county treasurer's office, they gave you a figure for sales tax revenue for next year. And for some reason, you lowballed that number. They gave you a conservative, almost guaranteed figure. You took $360,000 of that money and you didn't put it in next year's budget. All right? Then furthermore, as we know, the county is always conservative. And this year, sales tax revenue is way ahead of projections. The treasurer's office estimates that the town will get at least $300,000 more money from this year's sales tax. And so the question I've posed across town, and I'm posing here now, is what are you going to do with all that $1.673 million revenue? You know, and I've been playing with this, I've been talking about it, and I thought, it just can't be right. You know, you get this tax in, it'll be the gift that keeps on giving, year after year, surplus. You know, and then I went back, it can't be right. So I thought, whoa, this ignores the revenue side of the picture. This only talks about the additional revenue and additional townwide spending that I'm sure you're cut down. I was in the budget hearings today, and you're going to cut those down, I'm sure. But, so I went back to the budget, I compared 2013 to 2014, and it appears all the revenue lines up and it's about the same. But what I neglected, my error, was that in 2013, you used $880,000 fund balance on your revenue side. And today, the sad truth dawned on me. This $1.6 million in surplus revenue, they spent $880,000 of that this year. And guess what? The fund balance is now zero in the general fund and the highway fund. And so now it dawns on me, you need $800 for this year and $800 for next year. But there's got to be another way to do it. You take this spending increase for this year, you know, you don't save $100,000 on one item. You know, you save $1,000 on 100 items. But you know, Debbie's been telling me for a long time that you've been deficit spending. A long time, and she backs it up with the state auditor's reports. But I've got a report from the comptroller's office that doesn't say that. It lumps all the funds together and just gives a total for everything. And actually, the budget amounts are over what you've actually spent. And Donna, it is a shell game. It is really a shell game, because you're accumulating, what, $6 million probably in water and sewer, fund balance, right? So I think you've been over budgeting and overcharging maybe for those items at the detriment of the general. The general fund is where your deficit spending, 660 some thousand this year. I don't, is there, somehow, you gotta bring it all together, you know, and it is a shell game. The money's over there in water and sewer. I don't know how, you probably can't get it out of there, that's dedicated funds. But then you've got to cut your spending, you know, and if you listen to that taxpayers group last year at this time, there's a taxpayers group, many of them here tonight, you know, they gave you many suggestions on how to cut spending for last year, and you listened, you closed the meeting, and you didn't pay attention to them. You just went along with your budget. And then, that was in November. In January, you know, it came time, you made a new local law saying these people couldn't speak at your televised meetings. You know, you basically shut them off. You know, they give you good advice. You should have listened, but you didn't. And then you try to shut them off. I tell you what, if there's one person in this town that we all owe a debt of gratitude, the one that's been sitting here every Monday night with these guys, watching them for 7 years, it's this lady behind the board here, Debbie Blake. She's the one person that's been watching out for the town tax for 7 years. And Debbie, you deserve it. I mean, you guys got to do something about your spending is what it's all about. Thank you.
Mike Cashman?
Mike Cashman, 10 Mohican Lane, Plattsburgh, New York. I will disclose I am a candidate for town council. Probably meant to some of your doors. First and foremost, I appreciate when citizens come out and voice their opinion and also are willing to listen. Mr. Supervisor and to the town board, since I heard about this proposal, as you all know, I've been against it. I've publicly put it on my Facebook account and have been going around door to door sharing that I am against the proposal for the highway tax. One of the things that I'll pause on though is this, that if you're going to run for things, you need to have solutions as well. And one of the things that I have found to be absolutely appalling is our approach to getting our share of the sales tax from the county. The city is getting a lion's share using an outdated metrics, okay, where the city is getting way more beyond the town. And we're always talking that the town is the economic engine of the North Country, and it is. But the way that this sales tax through the county, it's treating us like the caboose, okay? And it's really bad, and we need to spend some time and energy as a town advocating and getting those funds so that we can look at surpluses and bring them in. Like Mr. Brudvik had said, I haven't looked at your numbers, so I won't question that. But if there is going to be sales tax, we need to be making sure that we bring in our share. The mall, Hannaford's, all the different stores over there, they're in our town. They're using our resources. So I'm not going to talk about whether or not we should tip over the sales, the cap right now, because I want to spend time listening to you folks that have things to say. But the one solution that I do believe that the town board should be investing in, instead of this, the sales, the tax, through the highway department, is advocating for more money to come through the county. Thank you.
Okay, Dan Drown.
I'm Dan Brown, I live at 6087 Route 22, Plattsburgh. My question, I guess I got two questions. First of all, this tax-free zone that you allow businesses to come into our area, I believe it's without having to pay taxes for so many years, am I correct?
10 years.
All right, so do these people still, are some of these people still here after 10 years? And if not, why aren't we charging them for the 10 years that they got free? If they move out after 10 years, why don't we charge them the tax so it'll take some of the burden off us? And how about the county airport? I know for a long time you weren't charging any kind of fee for parking, and there's multiple tons of cars that are parked in that parking lot. I know you're charging some fees now, but it's not enough. I mean, you go to Burlington, Montreal, and everything like that, and they're charging a much more fee than what we're getting here. Why don't you raise that instead of raise the taxes? Thank you.
You're welcome. Eleanor Lackinen?
Eleanor Latin, 40 Old Dock Road, Plattsburgh. Mr. Baker addressed my questions, and another gentleman here in the crowd did also. But when are the residents going to get a look after you've attempted to cut down the tentative budget of 47%? When are we going to get a look at the budget it's going to be the final budget? And are we going to have a chance to look at it before the next meeting?
The next step in the process would be to have a preliminary budget that's due the Thursday after elections. I don't have,
31st of October.
31st of October, Halloween.
Okay.
Thank you, Debbie.
And the 47%, how did that get figured? If you,
I don't know, that's a calculation that was done, which looked at the difference in the budget as tentatively drafted with tax rates that were part of making that budget balance compared to the cap.
and who does that?
Our finance manager.
Thank you.
That's nice.
John St. Germain.
Tonight you're holding the public hearing for the purpose of passing the local law to exceed the tax levy. A 3/5 vote is all that is needed to pass this local law, unlike school districts that must have a majority of the taxpayers in favor to pass. The local law should be proposed to bring the exceeding of the tax levy by a majority of the taxpayers, not by the town board. This legislation, obviously, this legislation was put together in Albany and gave the town boards and government an out, which is normal for government. There is no reason to exceed the tax levy except for budget decisions by the town board. In glancing at a payroll report from the town of Plattsburgh, it was full of errors, even though only 2 pages. You would think when you have a financial manager, supervisor who is chief fiscal officer, supervisor and 3 account clerks, a deputy supervisor who receives an extra $12,000 a year stipend, a bookkeeper, and a budget officer, you could get a 2-page payroll correct. I shudder to think of the number of errors in your 15-page tentative budget. Cuts can be made in this budget to reach a 1.66 tax levy with very little effort. The highway superintendent cut $125,000 out of his budget, and I'm sure the other departments can do the same. Do your job as a town board and make the necessary cuts and forget exceeding the tax levy. Thank you.
Todd Holland?
It's Todd Holland.
Todd Holland.
Yes.
You got
Hello.
inventors.
Hold on. My name's Todd Holland. I live at 1 Foxfire Drive, Plattsburgh, New York. Hold on. Now, as I was sitting here, I just wrote down a bunch of random things. These are the things that I was thinking about. Medicare tax, Social Security tax, income tax, school tax, sales tax, utility tax, telephone tax, regulatory compliance and intellectual property fees, emergency 9/11 fees, New York excise tax, New York franchise surcharge, section 184, access fee and state and county sales tax, gas tax, Obamacare. Aren't we taxed enough? I haven't received a raise in 4 years, so why should you get a raise? I know, how about this? How about a vote for the public? The public votes on the laws that you want to pass. See, I think tax increases is the easy way out. You think people may stop leaving New York if taxes were lowered. How about a decrease in taxes? Why not?
That is a laugh.
No, it's not. Maybe more people would want to live here, thus increasing your tax base. Problem solved. Thank you.
Jim Snook.
No comment.
Debbie Blake.
Go ahead.
Most of what I have to say has already been said, but I'm against local law number 3 for the year 2014 because it's based on a false premise. The reason the town finds themselves short of revenue in 2014 has nothing to do with the unpredictability or the undependability of sales tax revenue. From the day in 1980 when Mr. Mannix and his friends on the town board voted to depend on sales tax as a revenue source, the sales tax has been extremely dependable, batting a near perfect 1,000, with only one insignificant miss in 2008. This year alone, we repeatedly read that sales tax revenue is coming in at record highs, and yet the town says it's undependable. For argument's sake, if one were to accept the false premise that sales tax revenue isn't dependable for the highway department, then, to be honest, one would have to say that sales tax revenue is just as undependable for every other department. Conclusion, the town shouldn't take any sales tax revenue at all. But of course, the town isn't turning down a dime of sales tax revenue. So what is really going on here? I'm glad I asked. Spending. The law enables the town's out-of-control spending. Last year, 10 very well-informed town residents asked this town board to cut spending. They had been to budget workshops, they'd studied line items and preliminary budgets, and had found $500,000 of easy spending cuts. They said back then that town spending was out of control. The board blew them off and voted unanimously to adopt the 2013 budget, which included raises for all board members, a raise which Mr. Lemoy claimed he needed for gas to drive to and from the town hall in his Murray Electric corporate truck. I can understand blowing off Joe's citizen locals, but the board blew off the professionals as well. Since 2010, taxpayers have paid professionals $169,000 to do audits of the town finances. Those professionals discovered that for years the town spent more than they took in and used their reserves to cover the income shortfall. The professionals called it deficit budgeting. The auditors warned the town not to use this deficit budgeting in excess because it would reduce the town's surplus and create budget shortfalls in future periods. But the town board knew better and continued to deficit budget every year, spending more money than they collected. Guess what? The future period has arrived. The town finds itself with a budget shortfall of over $1 million, and the reserves are gone, as Mr. Bassett admitted when he told the Press Republican, "We've spent our reserves." Spending was and is the problem, and it's out of control, and audits confirm it. This local law is the key that opens the door to the tax cap blockade. It destroys the state's impediment to the town's headlong journey down its endless road of increased spending. Don't pass this law.
Tom Metz.
Supervisor Bassett, council members, fellow citizens, I am Tom Metz, and my home is 238 Champlain Drive, town of Plattsburgh. And in the spirit of full disclosure, I am a candidate running for a seat on this board. Okay. I believe that overriding the tax cap in order to levy $1.5 million of new property taxes is unnecessary and wrong. The new tax is unnecessary because there are enough cost cuts and increased revenues to balance the budget. Using your preliminary budget and actual figures from previous years, just by looking at what is budgeted compared to what has been actually used from those same lines, it appears there is some $313,000 of overstated expenses. One line is budgeted at $40,000, but shows nothing spent from it for over 5 years. That's 40. Another is set at $30,000, yet the most ever used was just under $4,000. That could save us $26,000. Another line shot up $100,000 in 1 year. $173,000 jumps to $286,000. Now, if money is tight, why do that? Most of these potential savings are modest, but there's enough to save $313,000. You're making cuts, you need to keep going. The other half of the solution is to look for existing income and see if there is some extra that got left out. Turns out there's $370,000 of understated revenue. Start with fees in lieu of taxes, which has been set to $60,000 estimated income, while the least we have collected has been over $63,000. There are several small items like that. Then there's the county's sales tax income. The county tells every town how much to put in their budget. And as mentioned before, they are very conservative so that the towns will get it all and more. But you chose to lowball that number by $360,000. That is guaranteed money that should be listed. Hiding it gives people the impression that the town will be short. Hiding money is not a good idea, and you said that yourself. The other half, okay, so does gaining $683,000 solve the entire budget? No, but it is a start. Add to the income side the $21,000 of sales tax that was not listed in this year's budget. You did get it, and the estimated $300,000 bonus at the end of this year, and town income goes up to $4,584,611. Take the expense cuts out of expenses, and for good measure subtract $230,000 for the highway superintendent, cut out of his own budget to stay under the cap. And the town expenses are down to $3,350,000. That leaves a surplus of $1,234,000 before 1 penny of new taxes. Now, I'm not a CPA, Certified Public Accounting. But if I can do this much saving by just looking, you, as Chief Financial Officer and your staff, should be able to do much better and still keep the town operating smoothly. My last point is this. Raising the property tax is wrong. You were all elected to represent the residents of our town, all of them. You are the trustees we count on to watch our tax dollars and use them wisely. Putting these taxes on our property owners will lead to more foreclosures, more families moving out of the town, more property seized for failure to pay taxes, less sales tax, etc. I accuse you of waging tax warfare against the seniors, the low income, and everyone on fixed income. Decent people will not stand for this. Gentlemen, you have failed your trust.
Alan Durkee? Alan Durkee, 12 Barcombe Ave, Morrisonville. I'm against this law. And when I came to the budget meeting today, I guess it won't do any good because obviously they gave you suggestions last year and you didn't take them, must be. I was watching the budget meeting today though, and you're nickel and diming like Ricky here. And I'm looking at your budget. And what I understand is you have health insurance for part-time employees. That's gotta be a pretty good expense. I don't know why you would do that, why you need 2 attorneys as part-time employees, so they both get insurance? You have a deputy.
I don't get insurance.
Retirement?
You could if you wanted to.
Well, I guess that's true, but I don't
Thank
have
you.
from another source and doesn't cost.
But you have Mr. Mannix, who says he's a town board meeting, making almost $2,300 every 2 weeks, according to your salary.
Wish I did.
Well, it's just like,
The salary list. The mistake coming out of the budget office.
so that's why you've got things to cut.
Well, just for clarification, okay, only because you called me by name. All right.
Well, only because your
My
name
wage
is
is
listed on the.
half, my wage is half of that, okay?
Okay.
And one of the things that will happen going forward with the budget is that $12,000 stipend that John St. Germain mentioned, that will go away. I will not be collecting that.
Okay, William Seltzer,
Not bad.
Greg Lucas.
My name is Greg Lucas, I live at 210 St. John's. The only thing I really have to say is it seems like this goes on and on and on, and everyone just seems to ignore the fact that there is not a never-ending supply of money, okay? It doesn't exist. I don't know where people think it comes from. The people that are sitting out here on fixed incomes, do you really think they're gonna get a raise this year? How many are you gonna get 47% raise this year? No, how would I know? I don't know how they're gonna get it. You know, where's all this money gonna come from? You people have reality, you don't live in reality. You sit there behind that bench right there, you make a rule, you decide that you're gonna raise taxes, and people can't afford it. They flat can't afford it. Look at all the houses that are for sale right now. People can't afford to pay their damn taxes. Excuse me for that. They just can't afford to pay them. That's why you see all these really fancy, pretty houses sitting on the lake right now with for sale signs on them? Tons of them, okay? Nobody wants to buy them anymore, okay? They don't want them. Can't afford it. Okay, well, that's all I can say.
Alex and Ed Houston.
I'm just here to listen, thank you.
Okay. Gail Record.
My question's already been raised, thank you.
Okay. Dave Witowski.
Dave Witkowski, 74 Barton Road, Plattsburgh, New York. I'm very disappointed in the town supervisor and the town board. The tax cap was passed by the New York State Legislature in 2011. That gave you 3 years to plan for this day by cutting taxes, by cutting expenses, making other adjustments to the budget. As I read the Press Republican, many towns and villages have managed to maintain their budgets under this tax cap. 99% of school districts have done so. Why can't the town? You've done nothing but continue to spend, even the contingency fund, to deceive the average taxpayer into thinking that all is well with town finances. In fact, they are not. Now you expect the taxpayers to shoulder your failure. I find this unacceptable, and so does everyone that I've talked to. The nonprofit tax foundation says New York State is the worst state in the nation when comparing the complexity of the tax code and tax rate. You apparently wish to continue helping being ranked number 50, even behind New Jersey and California. Our first property tax bill when we moved back to the area in 1998 for school and town taxes was $5,457.84. That's for both school and town. With the proposed increase that was reported in the Press Republican, our combined 2014 tax will be close to or exceed $17,000. $17,000. Each addition to the town newsletter, that glossy thing that comes out every quarter, says that there's a lot of additional development within the town boundaries. That's commendable, and I congratulate you for that. But where is the tax revenue from all these new businesses and residents? It also states in the Press Republican that tax revenue, sales tax revenue was up over $2 million, which was unanticipated. Did we spend that already? The residents of the town should not have to pay for your failure. Thank you.
Matthew Robichon?
Yeah, Robichon, 1312 Greenway, Morrisonville. I don't know, how come you guys are considering raises when spending is this tight, you're making this many cuts? How can you even consider a raise into this budget?
I shared earlier that that was one of the items cut out of the preliminary anyway, taken out of the tentative, and negotiations are ongoing with the employees. Obviously, we don't think 2.5 is appropriate at this time either. That's being negotiated. Steve and Brenda, I'm sorry, the last name?
New York, Steve and Brenda York, 211 Allen Road. I'm just kind of curious of where's all the revenues coming from, the New York State gambling and all that? That's supposed to help the counties in that. We don't see any of that for Beacontown and all that. Another thing is, what are you going to do? I'm going to retire in 5 years from my job, okay? I don't plan on paying my house off next year, then wondering the next 30 years how to pay my taxes because I'm on a fixed income and you guys can't budget the budget. That's one of my questions is, are we not getting enough revenue from the different, like Clinton County fuel tax that somebody else might be getting our credit for? I mean, I go to Beacontown garage gas stations and they're $3.77 a gallon up here. I go to Dan Moore and they're $3.48. The national average for gas is $3.48 or $3.46 a gallon. I'm kind of curious of where all that extra 30 cents per gallon is going. Thank you.
I have something to say.
Gerald?
No, wait a minute.
I have something to say. I'm opposed to your law. I work with children, and we train them, we treat them, we tell them, the law is the law is the law. If you get this law passed, what I'd like to know, is it like a release of information? Is there a start date and an end date on it? No, it's a law. So you get what you want. You expect, though, none of us are going to get a raise at all this year. We've made cuts in our home budgets, but you haven't cut anything. You have not shown any one of these taxpayers. You've just talked in circles. Thank you very much.
Gerald Harrell?
Yeah, Jerry Harrell, 5 Witherell Drive, Plattsburgh, New York. I found this very interesting, and I've learned quite a little from a lot of people. My first thing about this 47% increase is it's an insult to our intelligence. I can't believe that you even think that anybody's going to accept that. So I hope you're not playing a game. You're saying, well, we're going to save 47%, but we're going to increase it 15%, and then that's going to be great. I say you stay within your cap and handle your business the way you should.
Peter Gibbard.
Well, most of what I would have said or any questions that I had were answered by the points made by Tom Metz and Mr. Brumdick. But you did say at the beginning of the meeting that it was kind of, you expected it to be a bad year partway through the year, and that some things came as a surprise. Was that the revenue that was a surprise? Or something else?
To avoid putting my foot in my mouth, I'll refrain. Doyle Frost.
Doyle Frost, 11 Midwood Boulevard, Plattsburgh. Just have a question. I see a lot of people here have gray hair. I've got,
Some of them don't.
just reading the other day that the possible, no, I say possible, COLA raise for retirees under Social Security is 1.7. That doesn't include the, whatever they decide they're gonna take out for Medicare increases. Now, we're expected to live on this. You want to increase it? Why do we even stay here? Thank you.
I'm just having a little trouble. The next name, is it Lisa? Garrow? Garen? She left, okay. Fred and Linda Ward.
I'm Fred Ward. I live at 64 Sunnyside in Plattsburgh, out on Cumberland Head. My question and request to the board is, we hear a lot of your talking about paring expenses, and we've had to dip into the reserves and surplus and so forth. Could you please give us, maybe on the Town of Plattsburgh website, those areas that you have reduced expenditures over the last several years that would negate having to burn up that surplus fund that we have? And why weren't they addressed at a point where these reserves could be maintained for these rainy days that we have? I've yet to hear, or see any figures on what savings have been made by the town. And I'd be very curious to know what reductions you've had to make. If you want to know what reductions the folks here, all the gray hair and thinning hair and no hair and so forth, have had to make over the last few years, we can give you that in exchange. Thank you.
I apologize, I just can't read the next one. I'll skip, and if you haven't, your name hasn't been called, please bring it to my attention. Terrence Dupraw.
Name's Terrence Dupraw, I live in 16 Back Road in Plattsburgh. I just want to reiterate basically what people have said. Do not exceed the 1.66 cap. You have the ability to reduce it so that you do not have to do that. Go across the board if you have to. Do not pick and choose from within little departments, like the age departments of that. Let it go across the board. Budget as we have to budget our household. We can't spend more than we earn. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Hinsman, David Hinsman.
What I wanted to say has already been said by a number of people here. I've spoken to the board before, and I often like to have a little quote from somebody in history. And makes me think of Calvin Coolidge, who said the power to tax is the power to destroy. A lot of people feel threatened. Keep that in mind as you proceed.
And I think my last one is Ed Champagne.
Well, thank you. I hadn't intended on speaking, but I guess I might as well since I'm here. Everybody has talked a lot about sales tax, and I'm a bit puzzled about all the reports. On the one hand, you got the county reporting that sales tax is up. They even refer to it as a windfall. I resent the idea that they would consider sales tax a windfall, and the idea that they would try to make us believe that sales tax is largely the result of tourism and other industries that we moved into this area. In fact, a greater share of the sales tax that is put into the coffers comes right out of our pockets, and it comes out of our pockets on the ever-increasing fuel and gasoline tax that we pay. But on the one hand, you've got a guy like Dame standing up, and I gotta tell you guys, you're brave as hell to do this, because you got Dame being chastised by Gallagher and the other legislators for talking about giving 9.3% back to the taxpayers, which I thought was a good idea. The fellow said it couldn't happen. Apparently he's not gonna get anywhere with that because he doesn't have any help among the crowd. But you're reporting that you're cautious about the sales tax because it's not reliable. I've heard a lot of people here tonight say that it's been pretty reliable throughout, and if history repeats itself, and it certainly seems to, I don't think that anybody's gonna reduce gasoline prices anytime real soon, so the sales tax is probably gonna be pretty steady. So that leaves us with, why do we need to even consider something as ridiculous as a 40%, 47% increase? I mean, that's off the scale. Even raising the tax cap, which incidentally, in answer to this gentleman's question, I would submit that we're already exceeding the tax cap, and I'll tell you how. It came to my attention from the tax assessor, and as all the years I've been paying taxes, and I've seen properties go up for sale, and I've bid on properties for sale. I was quite astounded to find out, when I went down and researched at the county clerk's office, these transfers of deeds, that it seems to be the same insider crowd that buys and shuffles these properties around all the time. But that aside, the policy of the county, in case you folks didn't know it like I didn't, is that when this property, when your taxes are delinquent, that's a good thing for us. We get more revenue because they get 12.5% interest on the money. Shylocks don't even get that. On top of that, when the property is sold, the surplus money, if you come to my garage and get your car worked on, and I have to sell your car because I have a mechanic's lien because you didn't pay me, you owe me $1,000, I sell the car for $10,000 at public auction, the law requires that I give you back the $9,000 in surplus. That's not true with the county. When the county sells town property, city property, property from any one of the towns, all of the excess profit, the equity that those folks had in their property doesn't go to the children or the heirs or the old lady who's in the home and can't fend for herself, goes right into the county coffers. And it goes into the general fund. Isn't that astonishing? You'd think it would go in a tax fund to reduce our taxes. No, it goes in the general fund. That amazed me. So I guess you know where I stand on the tax increase, and I found those other items to be quite interesting, and I think that Mark Dame is trying to address that, so I think we should give him a lot of support.
There's always a possibility someone came in, you didn't notice the sign-in sheet. Is there anyone else who didn't sign would like to make comment? Just share a name, please. I'll start with this gentleman.
I'm Brian Hammond. I live at 395 Cumberland Hill Road in beautiful downtown Plattsburgh, my father used to say it. But the two comments, I think, I've been here since 1976. I love this area. I moved here from Schenectady, transferred up to the phone company. And again, I love this area. I love Cumberland Head. I love the lake and all about it, and that's why I'm here. And that's why a lot of us are here, because we just love the area and we want to be here. We're close to Montreal if we want to partake in that. I don't. Maybe I fly in and out of there, but that's about it. Every once in a while, we're like considered a bedroom community of Montreal. I've heard that said many times. Second of all, I think the town has been doing a terrific job, okay, on attracting businesses. If people they should take a helicopter ride and just get pointed out like a Google ride, and point out what the town has been doing since 1976 to grow this town. Because we had a lot of potential here, and it really wasn't being taken care of, in years past. And I think the town of Plattsburgh, and I'm talking politics now, because like I say, I go back to 76, there were different people here the last time I was in a meeting and talking. I think the town has done a terrific job. I think and they continue to. For example, when they took over the road on Cumberland Head, It had been not maintained by the county for years. Our crews went out there and did an analysis of what they needed to bring that road back into the 20th century, and they did a whale of a job. They were accommodating to the customers' needs, they took care of all the safety problems. They were almost instantly out there cutting the trees when we complained that, you know, we got one that's in peril, you know? So the highway department, as far as I'm concerned, has been doing a hell of a job, and I'm only talking about Cumberland Head because that's what I know, okay? So again, that's another positive, all right? There's two positives there. And as far as the salaries are concerned, I saw a blurb about Bernie, your salary, and the highway department's salary being something like 20,000. That's what I saw, and I didn't know what that was. And I didn't know if, or 70,000, I don't know what your salary is, but I saw a blurb on it, and it seemed reasonable to me. And I didn't know if that was the increase that you were looking to get. I don't know, you know.
There's no increase. Last year, elected officials got 0.8. I'm not sure the year before, there were a couple of years of zeros, but
Yeah.
it's been built on from where it was.
Yeah, when the figures I saw, I thought you're underpaid, to be honest with you. Again, it came from the capital district, when they probably make 3 times that amount, you know. So, first of all, I think the town's been doing a good job. I think it really looks good. The businesses are flourishing here. The airport's coming in. I know this is county stuff. Now, as far as the county sales tax is concerned, who makes the determination how much of a percentage of that sales tax that the county gets? How is that determined, how the town of Plattsburgh gets their money? In the end, I don't care about the projections.
It's an old formula, and I'm be careful
I think it's
shooting from the
important
hip
to know
on
this, though.
Well, it's very important. The county currently gets 55% up to, I think it's 27 million.
Rest goes to the state.
And then the city gets something like 23%.
Okay.
You can do the math on those two numbers, and the balance is shared among all the other towns.
Right, now how much percent, I know the city gets one figure, and then all the other towns, if I'm mistaken, all the other towns grab for what's left over out of whatever the city gets. Something like that.
Something like that.
I think it's very important that that be published. Because now we're talking about a lot of money here.
Well, we get frustrated because it was mentioned earlier, we see ourselves as the economic engine, and there's a cost to do the codes, the planning, the road maintenance. It's wonderful when somebody wants to pave a road for a project, they give it to us. Now we've inherited a future liability.
Sure.
And Marty maybe can address that because he's been here a little longer. I did request an audience with our county legislators to talk about this. One of them came. It is something that's pretty much non-negotiable, and I was reminded the county could choose to share nothing.
Is that because the county makes that determination, or the state of New York is making that?
County.
Yeah, can I?
Go ahead.
I'll adjust those numbers a little bit. I think what's important is recognize it's a pie, you call it sales tax.
Right.
Half of that pie goes to the state of New York.
Okay, that's gone.
Period. That's
We might get that back in other ways, but, you know.
Yeah. Okay, I'm not gonna get into that one.
Right.
Okay?
Yep.
That half that remains,
Right.
all right? The county, basically, if we look at, when we get done this year's sales tax revenue, the
Right.
county will have taken about 60% of that piece that remains.
Mhm.
About 23% of the piece that remains after that goes.
So the county's getting their own sales tax.
Yes.
Okay, it needs to be
Oh, yeah.
said, it really does.
Okay, about 23% of what's left goes to the city. And the city has 3 different formulas they can apply. They can do it on assessed value, they could do it based on population, or they could do it based on where the sales tax revenue, how much sales tax revenue was generated.
Do we have the same option?
No,
No.
they do population.
Okay.
So now those pieces have all been taken. What remains is then shared amongst the town of Plattsburgh and the other towns of Clinton County.
By percentage?
No, it's done by assessed valuation. However,
So if you got a higher assessed valuation, you're gonna get more.
but one of the things that happens where we are really at a disadvantage. Assessed values of companies that are paying pilots
Well, that doesn't apply.
doesn't come into play.
Well, that's the incentive to bring them here.
Right,
Okay.
okay.
In lieu of taxes.
But the revenue that's being
Right, exactly.
generated, we don't share it. We don't share in that because they don't,
States get
that's
that,
not part of the
they're giving
calculation.
up a percentage back.
If I had to break it down, basically what's happening is the city of Plattsburgh is getting about 7% of that piece, that half, that's shared by the county,
You
the
lost
city.
me, you lost me. First of all, we had so much percentage
I know,
going to the
but it's the
state.
23% that it's a very misleading number.
The 23 is spread between all.
The 20, no, they get 23 of what's left over after the county took their piece.
Okay, so the county's sitting there with their piece of the pie, which is a percentage.
About 60%
Okay.
of the half.
So then how much percentage is left to divide among the other towns?
Well, I'd say basically you're talking about 40%.
4%.
40.
40.
40%.
And then it's by assessed valuation on all those others?
The city gets.
No, I'm talking about the other towns.
Okay, that's not 40%. Because the city gets 23% of that piece that remains.
Of the 60%?
17.
23 of the 60. 40% gets distributed other than the city and the state. Okay, and then of that 40%, each town gets a percentage based on their assessed valuation?
Yeah, on their assessed valuation.
So we should be golden. With all the lakefront property?
Of that pie available to all the towns and villages, the town of Plattsburgh, based on assessment, gets 28% after the county and the city get theirs. Whatever's left, we get 28%.
And only
and say
three
we- as far
towns
as
in the
last
entire
year-
county take sales tax revenue.
I understand.
All the rest leave it in the county.
All right, but now, that dollar figure that we get, like what we got last year out of sales tax, because that's a figure we can put our hands, this ought to be in the newsletter, these kind of statistics, and explaining this, because I don't think hardly anybody knows. And they all get misinformed and all irritated, and I think it really ought to be spelled out, and the town can do that, they got a newsletter, and spell it out in layman's terms, so a guy can figure it out. Maybe
It's hard to explain, it's hard even on
It
paper.
is hard to explain.
It is,
No,
it is. Believe me.
Because if you go over
County for 11
27
years,
billion,
and I-
the numbers change.
The point that I would make, the town will stand to get its sales tax revenue.
What did you get last year?
About,
That's a figure you know.
say, 3 million, 6 million.
A little over 3 million.
I got,
Over
no,
3 million for last year?
no.
What was last year's? That we know we got there. Last
We
year's
told,
sales
you
tax.
seemed surprised when we gave you that low ball figure of sales tax numbers, but this is a letter from the county treasurer's office, said that you should budget for next year $3,575,411.
Okay,
You should have budgeted,
3.6.
I said 3.6.
right?
I wasn't.
You should have budgeted for next year that, but you budgeted for next year $3,216,000. That's
Yeah.
the 360,000 left off. But in reality, in this year, it'll be more like 3.7 million after we get the additional 300. So that is a very low ball number, and it's, like Tom said, it's questionable budgeting why you left that out of there. The county would say that that's unfair, because if we didn't take the sales tax, if we allowed the county to reduce our county tax, we would get that benefit of that 360,000 on our January tax bill. And so,
Okay, Mr. Hammond was speaking,
no, the county part.
No, I was explaining, it was still a little fuzzy on the explanation. Marty's explaining it, but I'd like to see that in the newsletter in black and white, so Elaine can
the other part of the evening is kind of blended with this is a public comment session. So I want to give anyone else that would like to make comment. Someone said gentleman in the back.
Hi, Dave Culver from 216 Rand Hill Road. Last week, there was a gentleman around to reassess my house and my neighbors. Are we gonna get a big reassessment on our homes and plus this 40-some odd %? Anybody
The
have an answer?
reassessment wouldn't happen until February 28th, so that would be after the new tax, but next year's tax would show the new assessment.
A year from now or whatever,
Yes.
we're gonna get hit with another higher tax?
There is,
Our assessed value go way up?
there is no program in place to set about increasing people's assessments on their homes. Individually, homes are periodically assessed.
Well, it's been since 97 or whatever, so I'm assuming we're gonna get a big jump.
If it hadn't, if you haven't had a change since '87. Most homes were reassessed within that
Well, every
period.
time somebody buys a house in my neighborhood, the assessed value usually goes up because the house sold for another $50,000 more or whatever. So I got a jump last year. I just want to know with this new increase plus the new assessment, are we going to be able to afford to live in this town?
Okay, we're getting a lot of mumbling. It's going to be hard to hear, folks. Please respect those who want to be heard. Yes?
Marcia Cook, 14 West Shore Drive, Cumberland Head. I was one of the people that were here back in early spring talking about the same thing that we're talking about tonight, the sales tax, the excess amount that the town is getting. 9 other people got up and discussed other areas that, items that could be cut. They sat there, straight face, and just like we were talking to the wall. I'm so proud that there's this many people here tonight. We should all be at these meetings, weekly or monthly or whatever, to pay attention to what is actually going on. They obviously are not listening to us. I'd like to know, as taxpayers, now you want to raise the cap. We all know what you're going to do. You're going to raise it. I don't know enough, I'm not savvy enough to know what we as taxpayers would have to do to have you put up a referendum so that we could say what we want done.
Yes.
And I don't know how long that takes, but I think we ought to look into it. I also think we ought to look into the town giving the sales tax money back to the county. We'd have a town tax, we'd have a highway tax. We would know exactly what our revenue is going to be. Wouldn't be any subject to the ups and downs of the Canadian dollar, the sales tax from gasoline. You would know exactly what your income is going to be if you had a town tax and the highway tax. Just like I know exactly what my budget is every month on a fixed income. You have a county tax, like Peru, they give their money back. Their town tax and highway tax is less than what we're paying in the county tax. So saying the town doesn't have any tax, you're kind of snowballing us a little bit. Because maybe we don't have the tax, but the county's charging us more than what we would be paying if you had a town tax. So I don't know really what has to be done for the town to look at, going back to what some of these other towns are doing by giving that sales tax back to the county and lowering our taxes, and then you would know exactly what your budget is going to be every year, because you know what tax bills you're sending out. And that you have to spend within your budget. I don't know what we have to do, I really don't, but let me tell you, if you go ahead and just raise this to 2 point whatever, 47% that you want to raise, people are going to be literally up in arms. And unfortunately, we should have triple quadruple the number of people here tonight to listen to all of this.
Yes.
Now, all of a sudden, when you pass this, they're gonna be knocked over by a feather. Like, what? How did that happen? Well, they gotta come to these meetings and see how things happen. We all have had to cut. You're gonna have to cut till it bleeds and put a Band-Aid on it. And you can't rely on that sales tax to be the Band-Aid. So whether we have to see if we can do a referendum to stop you, I don't know what we're gonna have to do, but you gotta be stopped somehow or another. That's all I got to say.
Terrence Day, I live at 22 Shenango Road, Plattsburgh. There've been an incredible number of comments made here. They're all very good, and really, really hope that you listen to them. Because these are the people that live in these communities. They work very hard. You know, many of these people haven't had an increase, whether on fixed income or whether they have decent jobs. A lot of employers aren't increasing salaries. A few years ago, I was reading the paper, and there was an article that said, the headline said, "Town of Plattsburgh keeps increase below the 2% cap." But then you read the numbers and you go down, and you realize that the town was increasing spending by 10%. And I said, where's this money coming from? And it's these extra funds. You know, and I know that this is only going in one direction. It's just going to increase and increase. The spending never decreases. It never even stays stable. So for you to increase spending by 10% 2 years ago, whatever it was, far beyond the rate of inflation, far beyond anything anyone here sees for increases in their salaries or their fixed income or whatever. You know, it's just ridiculous. It seems like you're detached from reality. You sit there, you have a very hard job, and I understand that. But you're taking the easy way out by just saying, oh, we'll just, 3 to 5 vote and we'll just raise 47%. I mean, it's crazy. People can't afford it.
My name is Leon Bako. I live at 54 Ashton Drive. I'm a sort of an immigrant here. I've only lived here about 9 years or so. But I want to say this. I think you people have to look at where you're spending the money. I spoke recently with the town supervisor about something that the people do in the parks area. You know, we pay for recreation here. And the recreation is not good. I'll tell you why. They have on Sunday morning, this is in our past conversation, Supervisor, you'll remember it. On Sunday morning, they invite all the young people to go to the bowling alley to learn how to bowl. Why aren't they at church? Why, as members of the board, why are you so liberal that you spend our money for bad things? We have murders, we have robberies, we have all kinds of things happening, and you know why it happens? Because you put the young people in the bowling alley on Sunday morning. I'm talking nuts and bolts with you. Do you understand what I'm saying? Does it make sense?
Yes.
Now, if you do that, you probably are spending money in other ways that is not right. And you need to look at it. And I say this because I have a neighbor that's going to be moving. You know why he's moving? He's a retired military man. He can't afford to live here. He can't afford to live here because you people aren't doing your job. You should be cutting expenses. Does it make sense?
I don't know. Makes sense to me.
This is what they need to do. Or else we need to vote in more conservative people. And we got a couple of them here. We need to stop the Democratic adage of tax and spend. And that is true. I'm an old Goldwater man. I worked for Goldwater in '64 in the precincts, so I know what I'm talking about. When Goldwater ran, I told the people, I said, if Johnson gets in, you got socialism, and we got it. And you guys are perpetrating it. But what you're doing is bad for the kids. Remember that. The kids count, because they're the future of this country. And if you guys don't do this job, we're going to have a big problem, and it's going to be building more penitentiaries.
Okay, thank you. This lady right here in front.
Forgive me if I don't stand.
Your name is?
Shirley Burial. I live at 17 Senator Drive in Champlain Park. And if this gentleman is new to the area, I've lived there for 56 years. I think I'm considered an all-timer in any sense of the word. They have raised just my valuation of my property over $100,000 from what I paid for it. That alone is quite an increase in my taxes. If you keep going and you raise tax on absolutely everything, I would certainly hate to think I'd have to sell my old homestead and go into a home because I can't live here anymore. And I'd like to think that some of this is touching your hearts, that you're not just sitting there stone-faced and not listening and not feeling.
Is there anyone else? Yes.
I would like to know when you are going to discuss this tax cap override. When are you planning to vote on that?
We're not voting on it tonight. We're hearing tonight. This is the process, a public hearing. The earliest it would come up would be next Monday. If it's going to happen, it has to happen relatively soon.
Are you going to announce when you're going to keep?
It'll be on the agenda if it gets there.
And that would be on the website. In the paper.
Maybe Dan Heath can keep an eye on that for us?
They don't put it, they get it, but they don't put it.
Why not?
Could that be in the paper?
No.
After,
Not as a public announcement, but
Well, the meetings are,
Is your calendar complete
come on
on
the
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 website?
agenda usually isn't in the paper. If it wasn't the paper, I'm sure there are people that don't read the paper. Those that might see it online can go to the website online. I mean, you can call and ask what is the agenda. Call the clerk's office, he'll thank me later, and ask him if that's there. You know, that decision will be made. It's not going to be held secret. It'll be part of the public agenda.
Is that actually going to be held up for a public vote, or is that
No.
just
We're doing.
people are just going to go? You already made up your mind. What's the difference? There's a single person in here that said one positive thing about this happening, not one.
Yes, sir.
Just remember, right after you do this is an election. So they're either the running, be careful.
Norm?
Bernie, is there any reason why you guys can't balance that budget this year with the added sales tax revenue? And
Norm, as I-
make this a local law that go to a referendum to vote on?
As I tried to mention before, we don't know what that next round of the budget will look like. It's being worked on. Obviously, maybe it's not obvious. I think I can speak for anybody. Nobody wants to go over the cap. There are going to be changes, even with cuts that might not be enough to stay under.
But
There
the
would
local
still
law
be
will be,
changes.
the local law will be passed prior to the preliminary budget?
It has, I'm not 100% sure if it has to be before the preliminary. It has to be before we adopt the final budget. If you're going to do it, you have to do it before the final. You can even do it the same night that you adopt the final, but it's got to be before.
Seems to me a little difficult to decide what percentage you would like to increase the taxes if you don't know what your final budget is going to be.
You're absolutely right, I don't know.
That makes no sense.
But it is the law that we have to put out a tentative budget. We did it, as I said in the beginning, with what departments gave us. We could have maybe manipulated that, but we chose not to. So we departments know exactly what we're dealing with. You know, and there's a lot of concern about what would my taxes go up. We don't know, because we don't have a final budget.
Well, obviously, you're counting on our taxes going up if your starting number is 47%.
Obviously.
And I mean, that may.
I didn't make up the
arithmetic
47,
these
that's
are-
what it came out to be when everything went in. Nobody went in and said, okay.
Are you gonna tell me that you're gonna whittle down your budget?
Can we allow this lady to speak, please?
You're going to be able to whittle down your budget to where that 47% disappears?
That would be nice. I'm not telling you that, you're telling me that.
No, I'm asking
We're gonna find out
you.
once we're done.
You already said
I
we're
am
asking you to do that.
asking you that question. Are you able to do that?
Yeah, we'll know the law when you read it.
When we're done, we'll know how far down it has gone. Right now, we're
But
meeting with,
that makes it
would you
hard.
like me to finish? Right now, we're meeting with departments, we're making decisions, things have to go, no matter what. It's not a goal of drop something and see what that percent is. We'll drop this and see what that percent is. That's not what's important. What's important is we cut everything we can and then see where does that leave us. Maybe it's way under, maybe it's still way over. You don't know until you make those decisions. You don't do it backwards.
Well, it
And it's
is.
just the way it is. I didn't make the rules.
How backwards does it sound, though, that you have to make a decision how much to raise the tax, above the tax cap, if you don't know what you're going to
If
need?
this law were passed, it's a law
Give
to
them a blank
override. It doesn't
Yeah.
say by any amount.
So it could be
It
higher.
could be $1.
That could be 50%, right?
Or $1.5 million.
Garrett?
Sure.
Yes. Gary Goods, I didn't say that I lived on Newell Avenue before. Just two more points. One, if the information I was given is true, the median income of the residents in the town of Plattsburgh, almost 50% of it is below the poverty level. So therefore, the people that have homes are picking up the biggest share of the taxes. You know, I'm not knocking anybody, unfortunately, a lot of them are below the median, the federal poverty level. They definitely can't afford a tax increase. So the people that are paying it, or can afford to pay it, are gonna have to carry the load, which is gonna hurt twice as much. The second thing, I've been up here since '62. I tried to talk my wife into it, I don't know how many times, of leaving this blessed state of New York. Her answer to me is, honey, I have roots.
Yeah, pull 'em up.
With the things that are going on now, she says, honey, we don't have any roots. Let's go. And that's coming.
5 years ago, my employer ran into some uncertainty and hard times, and they laid people off and they cut salaries. Why shouldn't we expect that when you hit hard times that you wouldn't consider the same sorts of things?
Run it like a business, Bernie, that's what you
Yeah.
always say.
That's right.
You say you don't know if you can cut or whittle it down to a number, but the reality is you can. You just have to have the desire to do that.
We've talked about positions. I'm not going to say any more than that because it wouldn't be fair to our employees. You also have to look at services that we have to provide. Nothing is off the table. Yes.
I would like to know, if after you sat there all evening and listened to all these people, do you leave here with an intention to go back and try and cut budgets?
I came here with that intention and with that practice. I'll leave here continuing. You know, if there were 200 more people here, I wouldn't expect anything any different. If I weren't on this side of the table, I'd be there with you.
To give that impression like you're being moved by them.
I'm not going to personally engage. I'm not going to get involved in a a debate or an emotional confrontation. Many things brought up tonight are things we don't even have any control over at all. They're state issues, they're federal issues, they're social issues. I can only control what I can control. The thing this group is telling us, and when I saw 47, I didn't even need you here to know what needs to be done. Every member on this board understood. The number was born, and we said, oh my God, we've started. We're not done. I can't sit here and say we'll be under the cap. I don't know how far it'll go. But I do know that when there are changes in the town and the program and the services, I hope everybody understands why. It's like a lot of things. We all get frustrated with New York State, but there are certain services we want from the state. And when you can't get that license or you're not getting an answer when you make a call, it's pretty frustrating. But there are a lot of those offices are gone. Where there were 12 people working, there's one now. And maybe rightfully so. But in the same respect, I don't know about you all, I've mentioned to some of you, last winter was pretty ugly as far as I'm concerned with road maintenance with the state and with Route 3. Maybe everywhere in the state, but I don't drive everywhere. The state has a number of seasonal employees that they did not hire. It's the same story. I don't care if it's Albany, town of Plattsburgh, or where you are. And for those of you that want to move, if you can find a place to move and this conversation isn't going on, let me know. I might join you and run for supermarket. But it's a real serious problem. I don't want that to happen here. The state wasn't managing the road. I would get out of my driveway. Our guys do a great job. I don't think anybody in here is complaining about the highway, neither am I. They work hard to make the road safe for us so our families can get to work, the kids to school. I pull out of my development, I get on Route 3 and I start my rosary because I'm not sure I'm going to make it down the road 3 miles. And I think, boy, later in the day it'll be cleaned up. Well, they spread something on it to try to melt it off. Didn't get plowed. That's a direct cut. And that's part of what happens. And the state would probably tell us, hey, our guys went out and did some trimming because the intersection was dangerous, but the state wasn't doing their usual road mowing because of cuts. What I don't want to do, and for some of us, what's it worth? Is it worth $5 a month? Maybe 10's too much. But what is it worth to be sure of all the things we get down to, that you, your wife, your kids are going to get up and down that road safely because we haven't gone that far. Jim is talking, it isn't just highway. I mean, it's complex. You know your bills, same one I get, same one we all get. It's a series of numbers. And when you add them all up, it's pretty frustrating. And maybe it's the ambulance this year and the fire department last year or whatever, but at the end of the day, you and I pay the bottom number. At the end of the day, all I want to do is be sure what we've done to get it as low as we can and eliminate everything we can to make sure certain services are still happening. The water comes out of the tap, the brakes get fixed. Most of you are probably on the water line. I mean, it doesn't matter if that line breaks and it's New Year's Eve, somebody's out there. You got to get them out there. They've got to have the tools, the equipment. We can argue about what's necessary tools, I guess, but that's going to be our job with the department heads. If we just said, cut, everybody's got to cut 15%, some departments don't have 15%. We got to work with them to make sure we don't implode, so we saved, $5 a month or something. I've said it, I know I'm speaking for everybody, we hear you. We knew what you were going to say. It's a good message. We're working on it. There will be changes. We can't go backwards. We're here today. Okay, you're not here to listen to me. I'm here to listen to you, but there have been some questions. Mr. Hinton.
I like to read history. Where do I read we have a town historian that I think we're paying about $10,000 a year for, is it? Where do we read his writings?
His writings?
Well,
Historian, where is it? Historian.
recording town history.
If the question is he doing anything for what we pay him, the answer is yes.
Is that necessary?
To have a town historian, yes. We also have two
Okay.
volunteers that don't get paid anything. Part of what he's done has done a great deal to make the municipality attractive to business, to visitors, for tourism. Yeah, but, you know, his budget's going to be reduced some also. That will be some of the questions. What is more important over something else, I guess, until we get there. Ed?
Right. What this gal said really struck me as the message that we should take home from this, because I talked to my kids and my wife about this, and I pay taxes in the city too, and they're higher there. I'll
Thank
give
you.
That. One way to stop the city from keeping the lion's share of the sales tax, incidentally, is to not to overlook the discussions that we've had in the past about the merger. Classified as a city, you can keep all the sales taxes generated within the boundaries. That's one thing we might want to look at. But that aside, you know, when you put the numbers in perspective, as she says her assessment's gone up $100,000 since she moved there. You know, a lot of us who are getting the age where we're going to pass our house on to our kids, or maybe we're gone and the wife ends up with the house. And you know, if you got a house and you don't have a mortgage on it anymore, you think, geez, I got something nice and clean to give my kids. This is what I worked for all my life. But it's a damn kick when you find out that, for instance, I'm paying $1,000 a month in taxes on a place in the city. There are people here that are paying that much in the town. $1,000 a month, if you give somebody a mortgage-free home, is not a gift. And then if you add water and sewer and the rest of the expenses on there, you've given them a burden. They might not even be able to afford to keep it. That's really wrong. That's basically wrong. And you made the comment a couple times just now that it's out of my control, it's out of my control. One way to honestly let it be completely out of your control is let the tax cap stand. The state put it there for a good reason. Say, folks, I can't raise it, there's a tax cap. Sorry, we got it all tucked in our belts, and that's the end of the story.
Yes, sir.
Next time you meet with a prospective company trying to move into the town of Plattsburgh, and I hope there'll be many meetings, how are you gonna explain to them that our tax went up 47, 25, or whatever percent it went up? Are they gonna think twice before coming?
No, they got a tax,
They get a tax break.
It's not all of them get a tax break.
You're right. Not all of them get a tax break, is absolutely correct. Gary?
Yeah, you just mentioned the water. You know, we all got good drinking water. Well, there's $6 million in their slush fund. You know, we got hydrants. We got hydrants in the town of Plattsburgh that don't work. You know, why aren't they out there doing their job? It's not up to the volunteer fire departments to be testing them, but the town doesn't go and test them. The town's liable if somebody's house, God forbid, should burn, and you've got hydrants that are capped because they're not working.
Yes.
Jim Carr, Cumberland Head. If I may anecdotally add to that, my neighbor's house burned 45 minutes before they could get a hydrant to work. They stood there holding on to the hoses. Felt sorry for them, it was embarrassing. Just holding on to the hoses. It's like Peanuts cartoon.
Yes.
Don Rushford, 22 Moffett Road. I have been having a problem ever since the water line was put in. I appreciate the water. When Luck Brothers dug, they ruptured my drainage tile. And every year, the lawn sinks. I call the town of Plattsburgh, they come down and take a look. Oh, you live on the state road, we can't do anything. Call the state. And this was done by Luck Brothers. When they hit the pipe, the drainage pipe, they didn't repair it properly. Every year, my lawn sinks down, I fill it up every year. Last year, they came down and looked at it. Oh, you don't belong to the town of Plattsburgh. You wonder why I'm against the highway tax? They do nothing for me, nothing. Even the state plows the road. The plow comes through, the salt truck comes through. The plow comes back, plows the salt off, they put more salt on. This goes on all night, every night. You wonder why our taxes are crazy? And tonight, I see now they want bicycle lanes. And I understand there's gonna be a meeting here in the town, that they want bicycle lanes along the road now? Now, come on. This is tax money. It's got to cease. I have, the last raise I got in my pension was when the first George Bush took office. The only thing I've gotten since is Social Security, little piddling raises they give us. And if this continues, I've got to get the hell out of my home. I'm 82 years old, I'm sick of it. Somebody has got to put cease on giving this away. And last year, when the budget was approved, you had everybody in here getting their sports award. That's all the people cared about. As long as their kids got a sports award, they could care less about the budget. They all walked out. There was very few of us left, and you guys didn't listen to us.
Gentleman in the back.
Since I guess you're voting in 6 days on whether you're going to exceed the cap or not, could I ask you how you are leaning towards approving that new law to exceed the cap? Certainly you must know at this point, granted, maybe you can't keep it at 1.6, whatever it is, but if you get close, will you, in your current thinking, vote to exceed the tax cap? That may be an unfair question. But
Yeah, well, I think it is, and I'm not gonna respond. I don't know if anybody else wants. Gentleman, right here.
Yeah, I come here 3 weeks ago, getting a hot license. I've been getting
What's your name, please?
Urban Parent. I've been getting them for 50 years here. And I guess Como said, town don't have to sell license anymore, you know? So that's one person you can get rid of. I sold the license.
As of today, we're selling them.
You told me to go down to Walmart.
Right, I did, but
Yeah?
as of today, the DEC reinstated our license to sell hunting license and fishing license.
Well, that's great, I already got it.
Lost that one.
I've been coming in for 50 years, getting my license.
I know.
Did Como reinstate you?
Pardon me?
Did Como reinstate you?
No, actually, Senator Little helped us get it back.
He's from Albany.
Well, no, she's from Queensbury.
Oh, okay.
And she also has an office here, and she was very helpful in guiding a few of the state offices through the process to get it back to the town.
Oh.
As of today, at 8 o'clock this morning, we're back in business.
Well, I used to get my license free.
I know that,
and
I realize
my dope
that.
permit free. Now I gotta pay $10 a piece for my dope permits to go hunting.
That's something that we have no control over, we just collect the money for the state.
Oh, I didn't know they needed it.
They gotta get money for breweries.
I see a hand, I can't see the face though, so please. Mr. Cook?
Yes, I sent you an email with some information about the salaries of your employees. And I didn't know if I could make it tonight, so I asked you to read it. Is that still on the agenda, or is that?
I'm not reading an email, no, not tonight.
Okay, I'll have to tell you. I did a study on the average salary of every town in the state. There's 900 towns in the state. Plattsburgh, the town of Plattsburgh is 46 from the top of the 900. If you take out the towns on Long Island and the towns on along the Hudson River, or the real high-class area, we are, I'm sorry. The town of Plattsburgh is 9th from the top of 782 towns. So, there's a place you can look at the cost.
Who's higher?
Zenith, they've got a hospital.
Is there anyone else this
They
evening?
got all the doctors.
Oh, yes, sir, way in the back.
Me again.
So what I've gathered from what we just witnessed here for the last couple hours or more is that the budget this year is larger than it was a year ago projected. That the fund balance has been spent and that the reason we're talking about raising the taxes is largely to put the money back that's already been used. And that that money was used to not face the question of raising the taxes earlier, like 2 or 3 years ago. And I think that's about it. That kind of sums it up for me. So the surprise that you were talking about earlier in the year, I imagine was kind of a pleasant surprise because it was revenue. So it isn't a lack of revenue. It's a lack of spending constraint. And that, sooner or later, you have to face the answer, which is we spent all the money, and now we need to go get some more, and a lot more, which nobody here so far has said that they can afford, including me. Thanks.
Yes, sir.
One more thing. If you're cutting your budget, please don't cut the water and sewer. My water's so bad, I have to buy my water. I can't even drink it. I'm afraid to drink it. I'll tell you. There's so much chlorine in it. When I turn the faucet on it in the morning to shave, it takes my breath away. That's how much chlorine is in our water. But when I came to the town and asked them about it, you told me, a number of years ago, go along with us. We have a new chlorinating system. Where the hell has it been? It's been 8 years, and I still can't drink the water. And I'm still paying taxes on water, and I have to go buy my water. I don't dare to drink it. Like I told you, you turn the faucet on in the morning, and I have to back up, or it knock me over. That's how bad it is. There's so much chlorine in our water. In fact, one of your employees told me there's sort of zones where you get more than other chlorine, but you say, no, that doesn't happen. It's equal. That's a lot of crap. It's not equal, because it's all in our faucets. I'll tell you right now.
I'm going to look for a motion to close the public hearing.
Make a motion to close the public
Mr.
hearing.
Maddox, do I have a second on the motion? Mr. Renadek, any discussion? Roll call.
I don't know if I made it yet, but that's my biggest thing, you know, why they don't charge enough for the park. I mean, grant you, it's a good benefit for a lot of people. You know, you got all these cars every 3 years, they charge nothing. Right. Then they decide to charge them.
Well, they're gonna raise it now with their airport expansion.
Yeah, well, they got a big footprint too. Hi, North Rice. What's the name again?
Bill Brutt.
I got real meetings. I heard that Van is retiring.
Well, I
I can turn
This is when you put those taxes on, there's not much profit. Now you're I'm going to increase my business 47%.
They can move
It's crying my eyes out. No, no, it's just got.
Hey, Norm.
Maybe he's got the answer. I asked her.
Oh, yeah.
Other things to do.
Yeah, good to see you. Well, you never know.
Okay. I'll call you. Just call and leave it. 562-6845. That's the number here. That's the town number here. Rings at my desk and you can leave a message. If you want me to drop some off, I'll drop them off. Okay? Great, thank you.
Oh, no, I guess. Well, they got a meeting. Something for charter business. And they also do like a computer. I can't get in video. Call Rocky. I don't know how to get it. I'm not sure. I don't know how to get it. Yeah. You could work, I know, you could work half day. Well, not at that point. What was the date now? Well, it was for the primary. Yeah, the general election this year? No. When was the primary, Marty?
The primary was
7th of September?
I think.
Jerry ought to know.
You give me, I can.
Jerry ought to know because he was in it.
What's that?
Somewhere in there, yeah, it was in September sometime. Well, I think you're still sworn in. Did you go to class this year? No. But they need people and stuff who want to just go down and get retrained, you know, go through the stuff again. It was hard to come in. It was so bad. What about it? Stop. You need to keep your mind active.
Okay, we have some business to do still. No.
Excuse me for breathing.
What's that? Give him an inch though,
Well, they're gone, they're gone.
Well, I said he was gonna take a break, thought he got going.
In my bag in my office. Okay, we have one resolution in front of us. It's Resolution 307, the appointment of Deputy Highway Superintendent. I think everyone has that.
You had a letter with it?
Yes, do you have a copy of the letter? It should be stapled to it. Did you, do you not have it, or you didn't find it?
Maybe it's stuck behind it. It is. There's a pad.
You gotta have the resolution.
Here, right here.
Ricky, go for it.
Whereas the untimely death of Deputy Highway Superintendent Tompkins has created a vacancy in the highway law. And the highway law dedicated that a new Deputy Highway Superintendent must be appointed. Whereas the Highway Superintendent James Wood has placed on file a letter dated October 15, 2013, appointing Timmy Dubray as Deputy Highway Superintendent. for terms to expire December 31st, 2013. Therefore, it be resolved that the supervisor hereby authorized to sign all necessary documents concerning the appointment of Mr. Newberry effective immediately. And it be further resolved that Mr. Newberry receive a stipend as Deputy Highway Superintendent prior prorated for the remainder of this year. And it be further resolved that Mr. Newberry take the oath of office within 30 days of this appointment. And it be further resolved that a certified copy of this resolution be given to the Budget Officer, Finance Manager, Highway Department Superintendent, and the Clinton County Department of Personnel for final approval. And a copy be placed in his personnel file.
A motion.
So moved.
Mr. Mannix, second.
Second.
Mr. Lemoy, any discussion?
See, just for the end of the year, and then he's gonna slide.
Mr. Wood's letter requests to the end of the year, so I don't know what his plan is after that.
Yeah, it's his appointment every year, so.
I assume he'll have an appointment for us with the organizational meeting. I don't know if it would continue to be Mr. Dubray or someone else. Maybe this is an opportunity to see what Mr. Dubray will do. Conversation with Jim today, he indicated it was not his intention to change his title. He's an MEO2 right now. He's indicated at some point in the future, he may have a need to do a promotion for one person back to an MEO4. He may need that. But his prime concern right now, according to him, according to highway law, we had to get a deputy assigned within a time frame that is appropriate to tonight. Any other? Roll call.
Thomas Wood?
Yes.
Martin Mannix?
Yes.
Paul Moy?
Yes.
Robert Newberry?
Yes.
Yes, resolution carries. In here you have minutes, please look them over. See if you let us know if you see anything. We also have the resolution for next Monday to set a public hearing for certain elected officials' salaries. Those have been adjusted back to the 2013 levels. If you got a copy of the public hearing notice, we noted today there was an error in there. We've got that for the actual notice, that'll be corrected. One on the public hearing for consolidated assessment rolls, North Country Life Flight, that is the same amount we paid for some time. I know I mentioned earlier about the outreach program. The letter should have probably reached the desk of Mr. Garcia today. I'll let you know what I hear on that. As far as I'm concerned, in this environment, that's non-negotiable. And then Mr. Stoddard asked that we give you a draft for the standardization of submersible waste water pumps. I think he might have had some conversation with the committee on that. I'm not 100% sure. I haven't looked at it myself. I just got it late today. It's been a little bit busy today.
Really?
You've
been busy? Can't be.
I also am, if we're done any regular business here, I'm going to seek a motion to go into executive session to discuss the work history of particular individuals. If we do this, I don't anticipate any action. The work session, for all practical purposes, I believe would be over. Ricky, I wouldn't ask you to stay, and I wouldn't ask Pat, I mentioned, certainly would be able to go. It's a personnel issue, so I don't want Pat in there either, or you.
Like to add to it the discussion of negotiations.
Okay, and collective bargaining.
Yes, please.
Don't know, I just want to double check, make sure I'm not leaving anything out of that. Collective bargaining negotiations, as per Article 14 Civil Service Law, collective bargaining negotiations updates. So we have 2 items for executive session.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by
Items
Mr.
mentioned.
Renadat, second.
Second.
Mr. Mannix, any discussion? Get a roll call on that?
Thomas Wood?
Yes.
Mark Mannix?
Yes.
Paul Lemoyne?
Yes.
John Renza?
Yes.
Bernie Bass?
According to my Mickey, it's 9:14. We'll move into an executive session.
You have business when you come back, or?
I'm not anticipating any at all.
See?
But-
You see, Pat?
Not my plan.